My wife, Lisa, cheated on me with an old man who was 15 years older than her. In order to get revenge on her, I found an 18-year-old girl named Emily. But I never expected that when I was in bed with Emily, that old man pushed the door open. He turned out to be an elder of the young girl, and following him in was actually my cheating wife. I discovered Lisa's infidelity on her 30th birthday. She went to the restroom and forgot to take her phone. A man's profile picture appeared on the phone screen, along with an extremely ambiguous and disgusting message. Do you want it tonight? I instantly felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave. I unlocked Lisa's phone. The person at the top of the chat list was labeled as David. David was my wife's first love. When Lisa and I first got together, she had mentioned this David to me. David was the elder brother of one of Lisa's college classmates. Lisa had a crush on him, but later David went to a big city to make a living and dumped her. Later, David got married and had a daughter, and then he got divorced. I scrolled through the chat records between Lisa and David. It turned out that they had started having an affair half a year ago. The two of them had cheated on me many times, and they had even done it in the bed where I usually slept. I took out my own phone and started recording the screen of Lisa's phone. After backing up everything completely, I waited for Lisa to come out of the restroom as if nothing had happened. The moment I saw Lisa, I had already decided that since Lisa was having an affair with an old man, I would get my revenge on her. I was going to give Lisa a huge surprise. Since Lisa was fooling around with an old man, I would find a young girl, and my target was Emily, David's daughter. As mentioned in the chat records between Lisa and David, David had told Lisa that his daughter was very independent. She had just started college and was already working part-time to support herself. She worked part-time at a cafe called Mandy outside the school on weekends. In order to create a chance encounter, I went to that cafe named Mandy alone on a weekend. Although I already knew what Emily looked like, when I actually saw the pretty young girl walking towards me with a cup of coffee in her hand from a distance, I still couldn't help but be impressed. Emily took the coffee out of the tray and was about to place it in front of me. I deliberately reached out but didn't catch it properly. Just as I touched it a little, I let out an ouch. The coffee cup tipped over, and the rich coffee in the cup spilled down the edge of the table and onto my clothes. I stood up in a panic. Emily immediately felt sorry and quickly apologized. I'm so sorry, sir. Where's the restroom? I need to go and wash this off. I frowned slightly and stared intently at Emily. Emily immediately led the way for me. Fortunately, the cafe wasn't busy at that time, so Emily didn't have to serve other customers. I deliberately rushed into the restroom in a hurry and let the water droplets make my clothes wetter and wetter. Looking at myself in the mirror, I showed a determined smile. Sir, Emily called out apologetically when she saw me coming out. But when she saw that the front of my clothes was all wet, she instinctively averted her gaze. Her tone of voice was clearly not as steady as before. Your clothes are all wet. You can't go out like this. How about you go to my break room first and change your clothes? As for your clothes, I'll take them to the dry cleaners for you. I pretended to look hesitant. After a while, I looked up and said in a low voice, well, okay then. I really didn't expect to be able to enter Emily's private space so quickly. I went to Emily's break room and crossed my arms, staring at her. Sir, this shirt is new. You can put it on, she said. I stared at Emily. When I saw that the tips of her ears turned red, I couldn't help but curl up the corners of my mouth. She's really an innocent girl. Thank you, pretty girl, I said in an intentionally patronizing tone. Emily left a bit awkwardly. After she closed the door, she stood outside the door. I took off all my clothes. Instead of putting on the shirt that Emily gave me right away, I deliberately shouted towards the door. Oops, what's wrong with you? Emily pushed the door open without thinking, but when she took a good look at me standing in front of her, her face turned as red as if it were on fire, and she immediately rushed out the door. I smiled triumphantly. After changing my clothes, I walked out of the break room, but I didn't see Emily standing outside the door. Since the purpose of teasing Emily had been achieved, I didn't have a reason to stay any longer. After all, I couldn't scare this 18-year-old girl all at once. Because of the need to return the clothes, we added each other on Instagram. Then I packed up my tablet and left the cafe. A few days later, I finally received a message from Emily. Sir, the clothes have been dry cleaned. Where do you live? I'll bring them to you. I'm not at home. Send me an address, and I'll come to you. There was a layer of amusement in my eyes. Shortly after, a location popped up in the Instagram chat box. It was the location of a bar. She's really a hard-working and motivated girl, always having so many part-time jobs. As soon as I entered the bar, I saw Emily, who was mixing drinks at the bar counter, surrounded by several men. I didn't go up to her immediately. Instead, I watched quietly as she rejected one man after another. After Emily rejected many men, I walked up to the bar counter and teased. Wow, you're really popular, girl. Emily's face turned red again all of a sudden. Here's your clothes. Emily said quickly, grabbing the bag from under the table and shoving it at me. I took it but didn't leave right away. I said to Emily, "Give me a bottle of whiskey." Emily seemed to want to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. I took the bottle of whiskey and took a big gulp of more than half of it without hesitation. I even let out a burp. Time passed. Around 12 o'clock at night, Emily got off work, and I was lying on the bar counter pretending to be drunk. "It's already very late. You're drunk. Let me call your family for you," Emily whispered in my ear. I suddenly sat up straight, looking drunk. I directly hugged her waist and even buried my head in her waist. "I don't have a family, just leave me alone." I suddenly let go of Emily, grabbed a handful of dollar bills and put them on the table, and then walked straight towards the door of the bar. But I was staggering as I walked, as if I was going to fall to the ground at any moment. "Sir, you forgot to take your clothes." Emily caught up with me. I officially started my act. I squatted on the ground and sobbed, as if I had suffered the greatest grievance in the world. "Am I so terrible that I don't have any friends? Does everyone hate me? Sir, if you don't mind, I can be your friend." After hearing what Emily said, I giggled at her and showed my drunken act to the fullest, so that Emily couldn't detect anything. I even danced in front of Emily, like a rowdy child. But vaguely, I saw Emily, who had been reaching out to protect me, and the corners of my mouth lifted slightly. I was weaving a web, and Emily had already eagerly stepped into the web I had woven. A few days later, I was ready to go find Emily again. Through chatting with her these past few days, I already knew her schedule. I was going to give Emily a surprise. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I stood at the gate of Harvard University, holding a black umbrella. I deliberately took a photo of the gate of Harvard University and posted it on Instagram. I even created a custom audience for the post so only Emily could see it. After finishing all these operations, I waited calmly, waiting for Emily to contact me on her own initiative. Sure enough, as I expected, less than 2 minutes after posting the Instagram story, Emily took the initiative to send me a message. "Sir, are you at the school?" Emily sent a text message in a proper manner. I used the voice input function. "I came to do some business nearby. I didn't expect it to rain so heavily. I got all wet. And since I knew you study at this school, I thought I'd come and see you. But I was also afraid of disturbing your classes." After sending the voice message, I listened to it myself on purpose. Although it was a bit cheesy, a simple girl like Emily would surely like this kind of thing. "Wait for me." I laughed out loud when I saw these words. Soon, Emily arrived. "Sir, I heard someone calling from not far away." I looked up and saw Emily wearing a white dress. She was full of youthful vitality. "Sir, it's raining so hard. Why didn't you find a place to take shelter?" Emily frowned and looked me up and down. "I was just worried that you wouldn't be able to find me." After saying that, I sneezed. When I saw Emily looking at me, I deliberately shrank my neck and pretended to be very cold. Hearing this, Emily pursed her lips. "Come on, I'll take you to my place." I was secretly delighted. I deliberately reached out to touch Emily's hand. When my hand touched hers and she didn't pull away, I smiled faintly. However, I caught a glimpse of Emily's cheeks turning red. I realized that Emily was blushing. This was exactly what I wanted. 20 minutes later, I followed Emily to her apartment. It was almost the same as what I had investigated. Emily lived alone in a studio apartment, which was probably bought for her by her father. Although it was a small place, it was tidy and clean. I even thought to myself, how on earth did that scumbag David raise such a well-behaved girl like Emily? But then I thought that I would sleep with Emily and turn her into a bad girl, completely shattering that man's hopes, and I felt an inexplicable sense of pleasure. "My clothes are all wet. Can I use your bathroom to take a shower?" After taking off my clothes, I deliberately wrung out the hem of my shirt. Emily turned around to look at me. She was holding a hair dryer in her hand, but when she saw my abs, her eyes couldn't help but stare straight, and she even swallowed her saliva. Of course I noticed Emily's reaction, and I was very satisfied. A pure young girl like her could never be a match for an experienced man like me. I smiled and deliberately winked at Emily. "Is that not okay?" Emily came to her senses and immediately averted her gaze. "Of course it's okay." After getting the affirmative answer, I deliberately went into the bathroom and took a shower as quickly as possible. Then, about 10 minutes later, I suddenly let out a scream. "What's wrong?" Emily's slightly nervous voice came from outside the door. I immediately pretended to be in excruciating pain in the bathroom. Emily probably thought I had fallen, because I made quite a lot of noise. She knocked on the door violently, but the door wasn't actually closed. As soon as she knocked, the door opened automatically. Emily saw me and immediately turned around, and I wasn't wearing any clothes at all. I walked straight towards Emily. I walked behind Emily and hugged her from behind. My whole body pressed against her back without any cover. Emily was stunned. I could clearly feel her back stiffening. I deliberately whispered into Emily's ear, "Don't you like me?" "But I like you." What was love? From the moment I was betrayed by my wife, I had already lost the ability to love. But in order to deceive Emily, I could pretend to love her deeply. Emily probably believed what I said. After a long while, she finally said in a hoarse voice, "You'd better put on your clothes quickly." But I directly lowered my head and kissed Emily's earlobe. Everything happened so quickly. I originally thought that Emily would resist for a while at least. But in fact, although I had started this fire, Emily was the one who made the fire burn the most fiercely. I was pushed down on the single bed by her and endured the passion of the young. I hadn't felt so fulfilled in a long time. I wanted Emily again and again. When we finally stopped, I was finally satisfied. I couldn't help but sigh. Being young is great. I originally planned to leave after resting for a few minutes. But who would have thought that I could sleep for most of the day? When I woke up, I found that Emily, who had been lying on the bed, was gone. But she had cooked something for me and left a note. "Sir, I have something urgent to attend to," and I went out. I cooked some pasta. "When you wake up, you can eat it yourself." Looking at the note Emily wrote, I had a strange feeling in my heart. Why did I actually feel a twinge of guilt? When did I become so kind that I actually felt that I shouldn't play tricks on an innocent girl like Emily? With mixed feelings, I quickly changed my clothes, picked up my bag and left. I started to go missing, because I was thinking about what I should do next. For 3 consecutive days, I ignored Emily, but she kept calling and texting me. I originally planned that as long as Emily stopped pestering me, I wouldn't continue to use her. But it so happened that I found that David, that man, was going even further. He actually started to persuade that my arrogant wife, Lisa, to transfer the marital property. So I deliberately sent a message to Emily, "I'm sick." The pitiful emoji was followed by my home address. Then, I called Lisa. As I guessed, Lisa directly hung up on me, but she immediately sent me a message. "What's the matter? I'm in a meeting." Looking at the message Lisa sent, I felt my stomach churning. I was indeed at home, but I wasn't actually sick. But now, I felt like I was really sick, sickened by Lisa. What kind of meeting was she having? I had already asked someone from the company. Lisa hadn't been to the company for 3 days. Lisa had been fooling around with David for 3 days. I didn't expect Lisa to come back, so I deliberately decorated the house in advance. As soon as Emily showed up, I would invite her to watch a movie. In fact, the movie was just a video I had someone secretly take of Lisa and David having an affair. I wanted to stimulate Emily and use her hand to destroy David. This would be more exciting than doing it myself. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. I deliberately pulled the collar of my pajamas down towards my shoulders, looking disheveled, and walked slowly to the door and opened it. Emily stood outside the door, looking tired. Her eyes were bloodshot. After our eyes met, without saying a word, she rushed into the room and hugged me tightly. I was stunned. Before I could react, there were kisses raining down on me. I felt that my lips were being bitten so painfully. A thought flashed through my mind. After not seeing her for a few days, how on earth did Emily, who was still a novice in that regard, manage to improve her kissing skills so drastically? What happened next was extremely natural. I thought that I was probably so indulged in Emily's body that I let her do whatever she wanted. When it was all over, Emily took care of me gently as I lay on the sofa. "I'm married, you know that?" I took a sip of the pasta soup from the spoon that Emily held out and asked deliberately. I didn't know why, but I actually softened my heart. I even thought that it might be quite nice if Emily stayed by my side all the time. Having such a thought, I only felt guilty. No, I should be filled with hatred for that man, David. I shouldn't show any mercy to his daughter either. I had rehearsed the situation in front of me several times in my mind. I guessed that Emily would be shocked and then break up with me, but I never expected it to be like this. Emily put down the bowl and spoon, and calmly held me in her arms. She said gently, "I know, but I still like you. Since you've provoked me and I like you, I'll follow you for the rest of my life and I'll never let go." I couldn't tell what I was feeling. It was a bit bitter and a bit panicky. The girl in front of me was too sincere, and I averted my eyes, unable to look directly into Emily's eyes. Emily asked, "Then what about you, sir? Do you still love her?" "Who? Your..." She couldn't bring herself to say the word, "wife." I was amused by Emily's reaction and sneered, "Would you love someone who betrayed you?" Neither Emily nor I said anything more. After a long while, Emily seemed to have done some mental preparation. She slowly said, "Sir, I like you. Be my boyfriend and don't go missing again, okay?" The girl's enthusiasm once made me think of not using Emily anymore, but I didn't expect that everything happened so suddenly. The tightly closed door was opened from the outside. The moment the door opened, I saw Lisa, whom I hadn't seen for a long time, and David, the man I hated the most. And of course, Emily saw David, her dear father. You too. Lisa wasn't stupid. How could she not see the relationship between me and Emily? There was shock and confusion in Lisa's eyes, and David's face showed a variety of expressions. Emily, come here, David shouted at Emily emotionally. What's your relationship with this man? I could clearly feel that David was on the verge of going crazy. Dad, he's my boyfriend. I didn't expect that Emily would dare to say that. I saw David's hands trembling, and even his expression became extremely ferocious. I slowly walked up to Lisa and David, deliberately not looking at Lisa's face. I reached out my hand to greet David. What a coincidence. You're with my ex-wife, and my girlfriend happens to be your daughter. My words completely irritated David. He was driven crazy by what I said. He raised his hand and was about to slap me hard in the face. I originally wanted to reach out to block it, but Emily grabbed David's hand. Dad, what are you hitting him for? Emily shouted. David looked at Emily in disbelief. Do you know what crazy things you're saying? Emily held David's hand and glanced at me. Her eyes were a bit complicated. I couldn't look back at her directly, so I immediately lowered my head. I don't remember clearly what happened later. My mind was in a mess. All I knew was that Emily took David away. Are you happy now? Lisa said to me coldly. Why are you treating me and David like this? David and I are truly in love. Truly in love? Lisa, I'm letting you go. I've already signed the divorce agreement. You'll leave the marriage with nothing. If you don't agree, then the video I took of you and that man David having sex will be posted online. Don't blame me for not giving you any face then. I had already prepared for the divorce. Seeing Lisa staring at me, I calmly clicked on the projector. The disgusting conversation between Lisa and David echoed in the living room. Turn it off. Hurry up, you crazy man. I directly threw the remote control at Lisa. I don't have much patience. After the divorce, I won't have to see you again. I thought I wouldn't have any more involvement with Emily, but that night, I received a message from Emily. Sir, I'm sorry. I apologize to you on behalf of my dad. I won't bother you anymore. I don't know why, but when I stared at this message, I couldn't help but want to cry. I didn't reply to Emily. I even blocked all her contact information. I cut off all possibilities between me and Emily with my own hands. Everything seemed like a big dream, and I started my new life in an orderly manner. Finally, I got divorced from Lisa as I wished. After the divorce, I heard that Lisa and David were together, but they seemed to quarrel often. I also heard that David had a car accident and was hospitalized. But all of this had nothing to do with me. Away from the scumbag and the slut, I felt like I was reborn. So I took a photo of my divorce certificate right away and posted it on Instagram. And I added a caption. To the freedom I will always love. Many friends left messages to show their concern, but I didn't reply to any of them. I wanted to see if Emily had liked my post. But then I realized stupidly that I had already blocked Emily on Instagram. How could she possibly see my post? However, I often dreamed of Emily, dreaming of every little bit of the time we spent together. When I woke up from the dream, the corners of my eyes were even a little wet. I then realized that I didn't just want to use Emily. I had also lost my heart to her. Looking at the secretly taken photos of Emily in my phone, I twitched the corners of my mouth, and my smile was full of bitterness. One day in June, I wasn't feeling well and went to the hospital for a medical examination. Walking in the corridor of the hospital, I immediately recognized Emily's back at a glance. She seemed to have grown a bit taller than before, but she looked thinner. I didn't dare to be sure it was her, and I even instinctively wanted to hide. Just as I was about to turn around and leave, Emily turned around. Of course, she saw me too, and she was the one who greeted me first. Sir, that long lost, sir, made my heart feel complicated. I responded awkwardly. What are you doing here? Emily pursed her lips and replied. My dad had a car accident. His leg was broken, and he was so depressed that he tried to commit suicide. So he was brought here for emergency treatment. He was just saved this morning. Oh, I replied dryly and was about to leave. The atmosphere between Emily and me was extremely awkward and strange. Sir, Emily suddenly called me. While I was in a daze, she had already grabbed my wrist. I looked at Emily in silence, guessing in my heart what she wanted to say. I even thought that Emily would curse me because of her father. But in fact, Emily didn't. I had thought too crudely. Emily was truly a girl who was gentle to the core. Sir, if I say I like you, can you give me another chance to start over? There were stars shining in Emily's eyes. I was stunned for a moment, completely puzzled about what Emily was up to this time. Why was she confessing her feelings again out of the blue? Wasn't she supposed to hate me because of her father? What if your father doesn't agree? I asked instinctively. Emily, however, said firmly, then I'll cut off the relationship with him. You. Was this still the gentle girl Emily that I knew? Emily rolled up her sleeves right in front of me. The scars all over her arms were exposed before my eyes. Who did this to you? My emotions were a bit stirred up. Emily gave a bitter smile. My dad did it. It's strange, isn't it? Since I was a child, others thought I didn't have a dad and treated me like an orphan. After all, my dad kept me by his side and would beat me up for no reason. He'd beat me when he was happy and also when he was unhappy, because he thought I was a bastard and believed that I ruined his happiness. All these years, I've been enduring it, and I've done everything I could. If he continues to interfere with my liking for you, then I'll have to completely cut off the relationship with him. My heart softened. I had no idea about everything that Emily had gone through. It turned out that among the messy relationship between me, David, and Lisa, Emily was the truly innocent one. My eyes became moist. Sir. Emily hugged me in her arms and choked up. Sir, can you forgive me now? There are plenty of people chasing after me. I deliberately pushed Emily away. The people who are chasing after me are lined up all the way from here to France and beyond. Emily was amused by me and she acted coquettishly. Then can you let me cut in line? Sir? Why should I let you cut in line? What's so special about you? Emily leaned close to my ear and deliberately lowered her voice. Sir, I'm young, I have good stamina, and I can satisfy you. My face instantly turned red. In broad daylight and in public, Emily actually said such words that made people think too much. Later, Emily and I got together. Of course, that man David wasn't happy about it, but he was too busy dealing with his own problems to care about Emily. Halfway through, Lisa regretted it and came back to me to ask for reconciliation, but Emily drove her away. I smiled faintly and deliberately teased. Emily, you never quarrel or swear. Emily kissed the corner of my mouth and said gently, I'm willing to do anything for you, sir. After starting the life with Emily, I realized that Emily really had a good temper and an extremely strong possessiveness. Of course, she also gave me enough sense of security. Every time I picked her up from school and we met her classmates or her secret admirers on the way, Emily would take the initiative to hide in my arms and gently introduce me to them. This is my boyfriend. At first, I cared about what others said about me having an 18-year-old girlfriend, but later, I didn't care at all, because I felt the happiness that I had never felt before, which was the fearless love from Emily. On Emily's 22nd birthday, I prepared a big enough diamond ring and proposed to her. That night, Emily cried her eyes out. I kept comforting her and called her baby with a smile. I knew that I had liked the right person. God was still kind to me. At least, there was an Emily in my future life. Emily, will you marry me? My eyes turned red because I was worried that Emily would refuse. But Emily nodded while crying and even took the initiative to stretch out her hand to me, indicating that I should put the ring on her. The next morning, Emily was woken up by me. I combed her hair, changed her clothes for her, and even wanted to put on makeup for her. At 8:30 that day, Emily and I walked hand in hand into the marriage registration office. An hour later, we held 2 marriage certificates and became the most important people in each other's lives.